Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today, we have very special guests, and it's two instead of one. So their names are Philip Blades and Chris Habas, the founders of Talentful. Philip and Chris, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
It's great. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show. And yeah, let's get started to get to know a little bit more about yourself. So, Chris, would you like to start presenting Talentful and yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris. I'm one of the co-founders and current CEO of our US business. I predominantly have focused on the client-facing areas of the business, such as sales, client services, and project delivery. And my background is in recruiting. So I spent about 5 years in recruiting agencies and then went on site to some high growth technology businesses like Shazam and Audible. Talentful provide in-house talent consultancy teams to some of the world's most ambitious companies on a subscription basis. So we work with the likes of Google DeepMind, X the Moonshot Factory, WeWork, Bloomberg, and then smaller seed stage businesses looking to kind of begin their journey.
That's awesome. And Philip, what about you?
Cool. So yeah, I'm Phil. I'm the other co-founder of Talentful. I work as the CEO for Europe. So that's over UK and Germany. So we have offices in London and Berlin. And then prior to that, so prior to Chris moving to San Francisco, I looked after the operational or business aspects of the business. And so I've worked in recruitment for 14 years, I think it is now. Before Talentful, I was a contractor working in tech companies, very similar to Chris. I worked at companies like Mind Candy, Thought Machine, Forward 3D. So worked in recruitment agency for probably about 8 or 9 years before I went in-house. Went in-house permanently and then was a contractor after that.
That's great. And congrats on the story. I think that you have made an amazing milestone so far with Talentful. It's really impressive when we look to the numbers. What can you disclose in terms of the stage of growth? So what is your head count? In what interval of revenues are you at this stage? So in what stage of growth are you at this moment with Talentful?
Yeah, so we're about 140 people, I think just under 140 people globally at the moment, predominantly in London, so probably 110 or so people in London. Last year's revenue globally was about $10 million US, split across different markets. Obviously we were last year very European focused, but then opening up San Francisco this year has grown actually very strongly through this period, which is pleasantly surprising, which is very good. And I think it bodes very well for the future growth of the business.
That's great.
And we're incredibly, sort of ambitious for what we can do with the business. We want to change recruitment, and that is what we're doing. So starting with the tech space, starting in Europe, but then obviously taking it across the world over the next, sort of 3 to 5 years. COVID's affected that a little bit, I think, but it's more sort of a bump in the road rather than anything fundamentally different, I think.
Exactly. And how old are you so far? 4 or 5 years at this stage?
Yeah, about 4.5.
4.5, yeah. I think we signed our first client in October 2015.
So I just want to remember our audience about the numbers and the metrics. So only 4% of all businesses gets to 1 million, 4% to 1 million. 0.4% to 10 million and under 0.04% to 100 million. So this is how difficult it is. And our guest today made it to 0.4% to the 0.4% club in 4.5, almost 5 years. That's really impressive. So hats off for you. I know that people are not very well familiar with the numbers out there, and that's why I keep repeating how difficult it is. And also for the ones who are not able to get here, it doesn't mean that you are a failure, because this is really difficult to get to this stage, and that's some of the stories and some of the lessons that we are collecting here today with Phil and Chris. So Chris, you have a new challenge. You have just moved to dedicate yourself completely to grow the business in the US, and COVID-19 happens. I assume that you are also changing your own familiar situation to be located there. So how are you coping with all the change and building and growing the business in the US?
Yeah, I think that, potentially I'm a sadist, but I kind of love this part of the business, where it's really scrappy, where you're kind of doing all sorts and really kind of fighting to get your teeth into a new market and kind of creating a position where you can, go on to scale and hopefully be a dominant force in the market. So we did a lot of research when we landed here, which set us up really well. And I think we were lucky enough to have at least a month or so before COVID hit. And we're able to build some really strong relationships, leverage some really great relationships we had from Europe to the West Coast, and sign some great partnerships. So, luckily for us, we're in a fortunate position where we were able to do that before COVID hit, and we've actually grown quite significantly during COVID. So we started in January. I think we landed on the 14th of January with just 2 of us, and now we're a team of 10. So
wow. Congrats.
We've grown during this period here, which is, again, we're really fortunate to be able to do that. But to me, it's really exciting. There's tons of opportunity here. The scale of opportunity in San Francisco is, it kind of dwarfs any other tech hub, really. You look at the volume of VC investment, the amount of capital that gets pumped into startups and scaling businesses here. And they all need help to grow and hire the best people. It's a challenge that's common around the world, and we're here to solve that. So for me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I like to say that you come from the king city of the EMEA region and the UK, being I would say, London has almost double of the investment of Berlin or Paris, which are in the second, third position and battle for the second position. And San Francisco has almost the double of London, so which shows the scale of the markets and how many problems and solutions you can provide, or how many problems you can help to solve with your solutions and with your expertise in the West Coast. Good news as well, I believe, is that the West Coast is not being so affected with the COVID-19. So East Coast and New York is in a much worse shape at this stage, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we were very conservative with the approach on the West Coast, and we went into lockdown earlier than anyone else. We've opened stuff up very slowly, and I think that has paid dividends in terms of how this city and particularly this region will recover. So hopefully that's good news for the tech sector here.
Exactly. And we always discuss 3 critical ingredients to scale in the show. So number 1 being radical focus, number 2, world-class leadership / team, and number 3, a culture of execution. So we repeat this again and again and again, starting with number 1, radical focus. So success is much more about what you say no than what you say yes. So there are lots, as we discussed, a lot of opportunities, a lot of segments to serve. And the difficult part is to say no to some segments and to some clients that we could help, but that will distract us from our vision. At the same time, we have, as you discussed it, a plan all prepared for 2020, and then an external happening starts, like a pandemic crisis, and we need to quickly adapt our plans. But also at the same time, we can't forget our mission and our vision and our values. As you said, Philip, it might be an adjustment, but the fundamentals and what we want to build stays the same. So how did you redefine those critical priorities when COVID-19 emerged?
Yeah, so obviously we've been running a successful business up until that point. So the key, so I suppose the first priority really was to protect the business. So, bottom line priorities. And the reason for that, in our opinion, is because, ultimately so many people have trusted us with their livelihood, and that's not something to be taken lightly. So we're protecting the business because we're trying to protect the jobs, essentially. Right. So, we kind of thought, well, so the key priorities are survive, obviously, first off, you need to make sure, and that's key for everybody. Use the time to innovate. And so that's what was big focus across the senior team in the business, really. We're thinking about, what's the world going to look like on the other side? What could we be really good at if we're going to change into doing something? And what do our, existing client base need and want? And then stay healthy as well, ultimately focus on yourself and make sure that, ultimately the pandemic or the panic around it is affecting us as individuals. So, we owe it to ourselves and to everybody else that we need to stay healthy, both, physically and mentally. Okay. And so from a practical perspective, so we split the senior team up into one sort of an operational group. So finance, HR, legal, operations, and us too. And we worked on the sort of contingency planning, or, the stuff, the defense of the business type of stuff. And so we, since it started, so I think maybe 3-4 months ago, we've met every 2 days since the start of that. So, there's lots and lots of moving parts in every business, and we have just tried to stay on top of everything, whether it's, getting discounts from suppliers or having to deal with other things. We've sort of done that as a group. And then on the other side, we have the directors of engagements. They're the people that run the teams and they run the projects. And so they're responsible for their teams and sort of their experience, basically, of the crisis. So, it's a very tough thing to deal with for everybody. And there's a lot of, for everybody, but also for people who are maybe new to work. This is a very alien situation for them. And so they looked after about 80 to 85% of the workforce, which is the delivery team. And they were essentially ramping up their touch points with the team because we're all remote, and obviously getting more face time with people is really important. We also formed a sort of cross-company innovation committee to look at what's next for the market. And so now we've got a number of new products and strategies about to come to market. So there's a few marketing strategies have come to market already, but there's some new products coming. So that essentially we think are more aligned, or additionally aligned, I guess, really to the new world after this. We were well ahead of the competition before the crisis, and we're definitely not going to give that up because of a pandemic. So actually, in a lot of ways, this time to sort of breathe and to innovate, I think, has been really valuable to us.
Got it. That's really great. And I love the idea of preparing, the getting back to normal, and the innovation and the future and the post-pandemic worlds, which might be very difficult to have mental space to do when you are still facing the crisis, still seeing the effects of the crisis. I think it shows a lot of emotional maturity to be ready to work on that horizon. So going to number 2, world-class leadership, and passing the mic to you, Chris, this time. This is one of the topics that I most love. I love the free, but this second one, because I see this happening again and again. And one first is the CEO moving from a founding team to a leadership team, for the first version of leadership team, talking now about scale-ups, and then needing to start working on the second version of the leadership team. So we know that in the beginning, this is the CEO and the founders have been doing all themselves, and this is very difficult to hire the first VP of sales, the first VP of CS, the first VP of product, etc., etc. And a lot of times it fails. And so it even increases the temptation of, I should be handling myself sales, for instance. So, and if you try a second time and it fails again, it might be even more difficult. So we always discuss here having the right people on the right seats for each stage of growth. So this is your specialty, is helping people to find the right people for the right seats. So what are some of your learnings with Talentful and with your clients?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really understanding what people thrive in your specific company culture. I think so many businesses want to go out there and say, we'll hire this person from Google or Facebook. And they're not really thinking about what that person's doing in that business, or if they're even right. It's more just grabbing the brand name, right? And so I think you should really deeply think about your business, the challenges your company have and what success looks like for people in your business, and create a template around that. For us, as we're a consultancy business where we're working in very high pressure environments where companies have just raised funding and they need to hit targets very quickly, we index heavily on problem solving and adaptability. So for us, the people that have naturally shown those qualities and indexed highly on those qualities have risen through the business, and we've been able to promote them and move them into leadership positions. And we feel that those qualities have been really helpful in times like this. We need people who can adapt, who can pivot, who can change, and aren't afraid of things being different. And I think a challenge that lots of companies are facing, especially with a younger workforce, is that these people have only ever seen the market moving in one direction. They've only been going one way, and that's up. They've been raising and raising and growing and growing.
Exactly.
And now they're in a position where that's all changed, and they aren't prepared for that, or haven't got the necessary potential or ability or experience to deal with that. We're lucky to have several leaders who've gone through recessions before, who know that this is just part of the process, and it happens on a kind of cyclical basis, and it's how you act, and it's the actions you take now and how you accelerate out of the crisis that's really going to count. So, and we're really, really lucky in that instance, but we've been really happy with how our senior team have pulled together, and the sense of community, and that we're all in this together. And just the understanding that this is tough for everyone. It's a really difficult time for everyone. There's not that many companies that are unaffected by this, and just pulling together and making stuff happen has been key for us.
Got it. Great. And Phil, what are your thoughts on this? And if you could elaborate at the end, I think there is also something very special here that might be a lesson for other founders and top executives that are listening the pod, which is you are both co-CEOs. So what do you think about the co-CEO model? Is it working? What are the lessons, et cetera, et cetera? So I will help you. I will let you go in the direction that you want.
Okay, cool. I think I'd just like to add to Chris's point a little bit. I think good startup people probably are coping quite well, I guess, because ultimately we're used to dealing with change and, competition and, things just coming at you from when you're not aware of them. So I'm hoping that a lot of people are really coping well with it. On the co-CEO thing, it has always been really good. I think I think when we got together when we first started the business, we didn't actually really know each other. We had a mutual friend, but we weren't friends at the start, and that's been really actually quite good, because our friendship and it's a genuine friendship, has really sort of grown while we've grown the business. But what it did help with at the start was our ability to be able to be really honest and say and be critical, constructively critical, but critical of other people's of each other's ideas throughout. So I think that's been really formative for us, because the co-CEO thing is probably one thing, but I think it's also our relationship as well. But our skills are quite complementary. I think that Chris much prefers sort of being external, being out with clients, partnerships, that kind of thing. Whereas I'm a very detail-orientated person, so I gravitate towards finance and that side of things in legal. And yeah, I just love that kind of stuff. So that we are quite yin and yang as sort of people, I guess. And then maybe when you then break that out into the roles now that, obviously the US is very much in growth mode. We are still definitely growing in Europe, but we're at a very different level of maturity and sort of brand presence, I guess. So there's still a fight here in Europe. There's a lot of competition. There's probably more competition from external recruiters in Europe, but I think that the split now, I think, also fits quite nicely with what we like to do and what we're good at. So I think I would definitely recommend co-CEO as a way of doing things. I think having two equal partners at the top of a business can be really good if they're the right people. And I think you can't be too precious about what you do and sort of what's important and what's not important. You both have to accept that everything that is done is critical, whether it's signing business or whether it's, you know, a saving of this or a new process change or whatever it is. And that it probably does rely on having the right people in the roles and the right relationship, I would say. But there are many examples of it working really well. I know that Harry's used to be a client of ours, the shaving brand. They have co-CEOs. They do really well from that. I think maybe Warby Parker as well, which they spun out of, the eyewear brand, again, were co-CEOs. So it's worked really well for us. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily work for everybody, but I don't think it would work any other way for us. So this is perfect for us, really.
And I love the point, and feel free, Chris, to jump in and to complement any thought that you might have. But I love the idea that you just added, that now you have kind of two businesses, one that is in expansion mode and one that is more in maturity stage. And we always say that when we are going global, it is really important for the CEO to have a strong commitment to move him or herself to where the market is. So this is really, really important, not just sending another person. So if you would have just one CEO, and of course in Europe, that's where the majority of your business, I assume, still is, it might be a huge risk to give your I would say your playfield alone to expand a new market. So in that stage, you can have a CEO in one of the businesses and another CEO in another of the businesses, and both close geographically to those markets, which is a huge competitive advantage towards another company. So here, the co-CEO model is really being a differentiator as well. Anything to add, Chris, there?
Yeah, I mean, we see it as a huge advantage, as you mentioned. You know, a lot of our competitors have single founders, single CEOs, and they're having to travel, you know, all the time to different locations and split their time. You know, this allows us to have, you know, this radical focus that you talk about. You know, Phil can be totally focused on Europe. I can be totally focused on the US. And that's only going to breed more success, in our opinion. And just having, you know, the knowledge of growing the company in Europe and the things that we did right, you know, the things that we've done wrong, being able to adapt that for a new market, and having that, the beauty of hindsight is actually a really valuable thing. And yeah, we've seen it pay dividends so far. So, you know, for us, that is a really huge advantage. And I do not envy solo founders. You know, I think it would be very difficult. I would probably have gone insane by this point. So, you know, having that co-founder relationship and that co-CEO relationship has been a really big thing for us, I think.
Yeah. And I believe that's adding on your point. So having a CEO close to the new market with the flexibility, who has been through the stages of building the initial business in the domestic market, understanding that every single client in a new market counts, that you need to be more flexible because you are not in a mature business anytime again. So you need to be flexible on your decision-making process and take more risk. It might be very, very difficult for someone to hire and even for you, if you are not living that new market yourself, if you are not on the ground talking with customers, understanding what is the feedback, what works, what doesn't work, what are the pain points, what we need to change is really critical. So let's move to the last point, the culture of execution. So if it is clear what we want, if we have radical focus, if we have the right people on the right seats, now it's a matter of execution and keeping the morale of the team, keeping the motivation, keeping the rituals, the rhythms of the team. In the tech world, we all are doing nowadays our dailies, our weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, annuals, all ends, virtual coffees, etc., etc. Anything special on your side? Any specific rhythm that is helping you, especially because now you are a distributed team as well, to keep everyone on the same page, to keep the morale, to keep productivity, to keep everyone happy? Phil, maybe I pass the mic to you back.
Yeah, sure. So we So from our side, we used to do a monthly wrap up before COVID. So we moved that event to a weekly event, and we do that on Zoom webinar. And ultimately, without the kind of the serendipity of seeing people around the office, it's really important to be able to get information out, particularly in these times, in a timely manner. People are worried, and transparency is a really good way of allaying those fears, whether they be founded or unfounded. And so in those sort of wrap-ups, it's very much a kind of good news and bad news type of approach, really. So we're sharing everything from new client wins to marketing team initiatives to who we're talking to from a sales perspective to government regulation changes. And I think critically though, we have an anonymous Q&A at the end of each wrap up, so anyone can ask anything, and we've actually answered every single question, which some of the times you look at the questions and you think, oh, that's going to be a tough question to answer, but I think it is really critical to actually answer the questions. And obviously the world around Talentful, mass redundancies, all kinds of things going on around, we need to talk directly to our people about what is going on and how we're seeing it. So I guess the thing is probably like transparency is key. That's what people need right now.
Exactly. Chris, would like to add something there?
Yeah, I think it's quite natural when there's a time like this, and your leadership team are really trying to kind of batten down the hatches and go into defensive mode and do all they can to focus on surviving and focus on growing, to become more detached from your people. But I think you have to double down on being available to your teams, being visible, communicating to your teams. And I think that's what we've really tried to focus on. Over communicating at every point that we can, talking through our decision-making process, trying to have people involved in as many ways as we can in this process, because it is a very scary time for people. There's a lot of uncertainty. If you look around the market, there's mass redundancies happening. People are unsure of what's going to happen to them. So for us, it's really important that we create some security and confidence in our team, because as you said, it's really important that we maintain confidence in our mission and our vision moving forward, because we strongly believe that this is a blip, this is a time of challenge, but we were going to get through it, and we're going to be stronger for it out the other end. So keeping people on that journey, keeping people up to date is really crucial.
Yeah, and I think that's really the point. So I think there was someone that was saying first focus on survival, and then you need to focus on thriving. So if people are taking a lot of sacrifices without a why and without a vision long term, this will lead to burnout, and this will lead to no hope, no optimism, no belief in the future. So which is the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Just to eat and pay the bills? And I think that this is really the survival state of the human being. And I think that in tech especially, we are a little bit ahead of that state of mind. So I've been taking a lot of time talking about purpose, talking about culture, talking about an amazing employee experience, the employee onboarding, etc. As we discussed it with customer, I think that's tech in that sense is well advanced comparing to other industries, given the quality of the talent that we compete for. So in order to compete in the market, we need to offer that standards. If we don't offer that standards, we don't have the opportunity to get the best. And if we don't get the best, we can't have a competitive advantage. If we don't have a competitive advantage, we can't get business results. So, and the good thing is having purpose and having a area of fulfillment at the same time, getting to results, and both are interconnected. So we came to the last question of the show, and one of our favorites before we go. And Chris, let's start with you. Let's see if you pass the exam, which is, if you would have the opportunity to join Talentful again, or to found the startup Talentful again, and if you would have the opportunity to talk with your younger self 4.5 years ago, what advice would you offer to Chris at that time?
Yeah, I'd just say embrace the process. There's going to be ups and downs. That's inevitable, but there's learnings from each of those events. And and just make sure that you're learning and enjoying, taking time to enjoy and reflect on the success you've had, and be comfortable with the process. Yeah.
Love it. Phil, that's your final word to you. So you have the opportunity to wrap up.
Okay. So I think
with the same question, of course.
So I felt that I've been much happier as I've got older, and I think maybe it's something about the perspective of years of work and experience, and maybe not sweating the small stuff as much. So I think like things get better, and I think things get better as you do get older and as you gain more experience. So if things are hard where you are right now, that actually the experience of time makes it get better.
Love it. And the good news as well, and I close the show with this, is that you have been profitable almost since day one. So you have never raised external funding. And curiously, all the sector now is trying to have EBITDA zero or EBITDA positive, so they can rely on the hypothesis of not having to raise a round in the upcoming months, given the uncertainty of the market. So hats off to you, because you got to those 0.4% with external, without external fundraising, which is even more impressive in such a short period of time. Chris and Phil, thanks so much for making the time to join us and to share your experience with the community. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for inviting us.
And to our community, we keep here bringing you the best of the best, inspiring stories, practical lessons, so you can go through wartime and peacetime and be successful, whatever are the results, because success is a process and a habit and not only a result. So see you soon and keep scaling.